podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. You can follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. You can follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook, subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers, the #1 Packers podcast on the internet, and the show for fans who know what happened. They want to know why and how. De'Vondre Campbell is a Green Bay Packer once more. We are here, an emergency podcast to talk about it. It was such an emergency, I screwed up the stream the first time. We are here. Everyone is in off-season mode a little bit, I guess, including me. De'Vondre Campbell is back on a 5-year, $50 million deal. When the Jacksonville Jaguars signed a linebacker earlier in the day for 3 years, 45. I think that raised a lot of eyebrows like, okay, what is De'Vondre Campbell going to get? Including my own. I'm going, if De'Vondre Campbell is going to get 15, 16 plus million, that's just too much. That's just too much for the Green Bay Packers to stomach. I think it's too much for almost any linebacker. I mean, it's too much for Fred Warner. It's too much for Darius Leonard, for me. And I think it's too much in this defense as well. The LA Rams just won the Super Bowl with Troy Reeder as a starting linebacker. 2 years ago, the Chiefs won a Super Bowl with Anthony Hitchens and Damian Wilson playing linebacker. You do not need a high-end linebacker to win games, especially if your offense is really good, which Green Bay's is going to be. What's interesting is earlier in the day, we got a report from Aaron Wilson over at Pro Football Network that the Packers were going to bring back Russell Douglas. And Tom Silverstein had previously reported that De'Vondre Campbell was going to hit the market. He was going to test the free agent market. And I suppose technically he did that because he signed after the tampering period began. So he was able to talk to other teams to see what the market truly was out there for his services. And he ends up coming back to the Packers. Tom Silverstein has the numbers on the deal. It's $16.25 million in year one, 21 in the first 2 years, and 32 over the first 3 years. So it's really $10 million per. We're going to see the cap implications of this in a little bit. We will see exactly what it looks like on the cap in 2022. But it's not fake money. It's real money. But also, we just know it's going to be structured in a way that makes sense for Green Bay in 2022 specifically. The cap is going to explode in 2023 and probably explode again in 2024. The new rights money, the Amazon money is going to be huge for the salary cap. What makes this more interesting, though, is it comes in the backdrop of what we know about what happened earlier in the day, and that is the Packers released Zadarius Smith. The Packers re-signed Preston Smith. Davante Adams is still not signed. He is still unhappy with where the negotiations are with the Green Bay Packers, and Aaron Rodgers is still unsigned. Now, it may be the case that the Rodgers money that they're freeing up, and what's funny is we're hearing from people like Tom Silverstein and Ian Rappaport about how the Packers are saving a significant amount of money on the cap with the new Aaron Rodgers deal. And we don't have a new Aaron Rodgers deal. At least we don't know what it looks like. It's not been submitted to the league. So that money has not technically been saved yet. The Packers still have plenty of work to do just to get under the cap, much less have room for De'Vondre Campbell and Davante Adams. So there's still a lot more that is to come here. And we're going to talk more about some of that stuff on the rest of the podcast. We are focusing right now on De'Vondre Campbell. But we need to have the context in all of this. They were prioritizing Campbell. And that was all the reporting that we had heard over the weekend. ESPN reporting that Campbell was priority number one, in addition to Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams at the top. They're sort of in their own tier because Rodgers is coming back and Davante is a free agent, or is tagged, so he's not technically a free agent. This Campbell deal needs to get done now. Rasul Douglas is the next guy. If Aaron Wilson is right, that he is going to be back, Marquez Valdes-Scantling is almost certainly going to be gone. They've already made the Billy Turner move and the Zadarius Smith move. Are there more cuts to come? It's also been reported Randall Cobb is going to be back. What does that number look like? They can save $5+ million on an extension for him. Or maybe he just comes back and says, whatever, I'll take a bunch less. And I'll do it for super cheap. What is the De'Vondre Campbell of it all, though? I made the case earlier in the day that if you're going to just look at true value positionally, Rasul Douglas is the more valuable player to the Packers than De'Vondre Campbell, even though Rasul Douglas, I don't think, is as good relative to his peers as De'Vondre Campbell. De'Vondre Campbell last year played like one of the 2 or 3 best off-ball linebackers in football. It was like Fred Warner, Darius Leonard, and him. He played well above bigger names like Devin White, Levante David, Bobby Wagner, guys that we thought just a year ago the Packers would never have a linebacker as good as those guys because they just weren't going to put the resources into it. They were just not going to allocate a first-round pick, a second-round pick, even a third-round pick, likely, to that position, and they were certainly not going to pay the big money, $15+ million. The Fred Warner deal, I think he's making 17, 18, 20. That's crazy money. I think it can be true that positional value is part of the equation here. And that this is a good deal for Green Bay because they didn't have to pay that top of market. They didn't have to pay 15+. They got him for 10. And it's a real 10. And that is, I think, much more in the playground where you want to be, especially because we really just have the 1 year of De'Vondre Campbell at that price. Now, what does he give you that, say, a replacement level doesn't? Corey Littleton, for example. And I think Corey Littleton, if they couldn't have gotten the De'Vondre Campbell deal worked out, I think Corey Littleton would have made a lot of sense as a bargain signing on a prove-it deal. Interestingly, Corey Littleton's best year, his breakout season, was with Joe Barry as his coach, and De'Vondre Campbell's best year was with Joe Barry as his coach. Now, if Joe Barry is just a linebacker magician, you don't need to pay a lot of money for those guys. But it might be the case that someone like De'Vondre Campbell, because of his skill set, is an ideal fit in the Joe Barry defense and is therefore worth more to the Packers than he might be worth elsewhere. I think that is true. Right now, when you look at what De'Vondre Campbell gave the Packers last year, it was something that they haven't had in a long time. His ability to cover tight ends, to cover running backs, to man the middle of the field in coverage. The Packers haven't had maybe ever. I mean, seriously, maybe ever. And you go back, they've had some great linebackers, but they played in different eras. They had different skill sets. I don't want to disrespect Tim Harris or Ray Nitschke or any of those guys by any means. I'm not saying De'Vondre Campbell is greater than those guys. What I'm saying is that particular skill set is incredibly valuable for the Packers, and he was a plus run defender. When you look at any numbers, I looked at the total points numbers. De'Vondre Campbell right there at the top of the league in points saved. So was Rasul Douglas, by the way, and Rasul Douglas only started 9 games. So you're bringing back a marquee player, an all-pro, at a below-market deal, he's still young. That's the thing, is he's still young. So you're getting him at a time when he could still be an ascending player. We don't know what the ceiling is. He's still only 28. Now he's going to turn 29, probably not going to play the full 5 years on this deal, probably only going to play 3 years on this deal, and then you move on, and that's fine. But he also doesn't have the same sort of mileage. So I like this deal for Green Bay. It makes them better than they would have been without him. There's no question about that. There's just no question about that. And I think it is a signal to someone like Aaron Rodgers, to someone like Davante Adams, to someone like Jair Alexander or Rashawn Gary that, hey, we pay people around here. This is what the Packers do. I think that's important. That part of this, to say to your guys, if you play well here, you play at an elite level, you play at a top, not even elite level, but you play at a high level, you will get paid. And so the Packers have done that with De'Vondre Campbell. He makes this defense better than if he weren't on it. Now, would he be even better if you had some more help up front? Some more beef? Yes, I think that's going to be a priority for the Packers. What does this mean for the draft? Makes sense to keep Chris Barnes, who they can keep for cheap. And I don't think you need to prioritize it. I don't think the Packers draft a linebacker until day 3, and even then it'll be a special teams only guy, a guy with a bunch of physical tools who can run really fast. I mean, you can take the linebacker in the second or even first round out of the equation. That's just not happening. They're not doing it. They have their linebacker. They only really need to play with one anyway. Now the question is, what do you do with Russell Douglas? What is he worth to Green Bay? And then how much more space can you clear? It doesn't seem likely the Packers are going to be able to get a new deal done with Davante Adams. So if they can't get a new deal done with Davante Adams, they need to clear 30 plus million to accommodate all of these other things that are going on. That's a big ask. Now they can, we don't know what the Rodgers numbers looks like. We don't know how close they are on an Adams deal. It doesn't seem like they're that close, but deadline spur action. We're sitting here, at 3:15 Lambeau time on Monday afternoon. So a lot can still happen today. A lot can still happen tomorrow. They have until 4 p.m. East, 4 p.m. NFL headquarters time on Wednesday to get this figured out. So a lot can happen between now and then. A lot will happen between now and then, and we will be here for all of it. That's all we're going to do for now. A lot more to come. We will have the podcast up in the morning. This is going to be up on YouTube right now, immediately. If you want to be a part of anything we're doing here, the emergency style podcast, just these little quick hits. Let's just get instant reactions. Let's get in, let's figure it out, and let's get on with our day. We're here on YouTube, Locked On Packers, me on Twitter at Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter at Locked On Packers. And hopefully we'll have a lot more here to talk about coming up very, very soon.